Hello and welcome to Ascending Order with me, Basil Valentine. Today, Tuesday, the 23rd of September, 2025, 230925. And the United Nations General Assembly is underway in New York without, of course, the quisling presence of Mahmoud Abbas, the so-called leader of the Palestinian Authority. It's extraordinary, really, that he was denied a visa. He made a short speech by video link yesterday. And that's in spite of having bent over backwards to do everything he possibly can to appease the Zionists, even to the point of agreeing that a future Palestinian state must be demilitarized. Why are you opening with that story, Basil? Well, it's the biggest story in the world at the moment. Tremendous diplomatic hijinks taking place over there in New York with Canada, Australia, France, and of course the United Kingdom, all deciding to recognize the state of Palestine in the last few days, much to the irritation of the Israelis and indeed the United States. Donald Trump will be speaking to the General Assembly later today, and he is expected to deliver a typically thump-thumping speech, tub-thumping, that's right, in which he will decry globalist institutions, which he will claim have significantly decayed the world order. This, according to a United States White House spokesman in advance of the event. Later, he will hold one-on-one meetings with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and with the leaders of Ukraine, Argentina, the embattled Zionist Javier Milei, and the European Union. I'm not sure whether that's puppets like von der Leyen or the puppets that masquerade as heads of state. They've been taking it in turns to address the General Assembly yesterday. Of course, the genocide in the Middle East is the number one topic, though very few of them are willing to call it by its name. Later in the program, after 1:30, I'll be joined by investigative journalist, my former colleague, Johnny Vedmore, to talk about how all these events are interrelated. He's done a lot of sterling work on the Epstein case. Kash Patel, of course, saying only last week that there was no evidence that Epstein had trafficked minors to anyone at all, in spite of the reams of eyewitness testimony to the contrary. Apparently, all these girls were for his own private consumption. Really bizarre claim, which indeed flies in the face of the results of Epstein's trial when he got his sweetheart deal. Everybody knows there's a massive cover-up going on. I'll be asking Johnny about that and the extent to which it affects American politics. Is everybody blackmailed, or is it just a few of them? Are the rest of them under some kind of hypnotic mind control? I would venture to suggest that most of the planet has been under some kind of hypnotic mind control for the last 70 years when it comes to the Middle East. How else can you possibly explain a country being allowed to get away with war crimes that are absolutely off the charts in terms of their depravity and indeed their scale? I won't stop reminding people that the latest academic estimate is that 680,000 Palestinians have been slaughtered. Nevertheless, the worm is turning. Ireland are one of the few, more than the meekest noises about the genocide. And the Irish Taoiseach Micheál Martin spoke to the UN General Assembly yesterday, as we can hear now.
I thank the Prime Minister of Canada for his statement. I give the floor to the Prime Minister of Ireland.
Presidents, co-chairs, May I begin by thanking France and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for convening us today, and I commend them for their leadership on this most vital of issues. Those of us gathered here know that the only viable option to deliver a peaceful future for Israel and for Palestine is a two-state solution. At this most critical juncture, we must continue to put our full political weight behind it. The situation on the ground has rarely looked so bleak. A just and lasting peace seems further away than it ever has. But in our own peace process in Northern Ireland, to a conflict of 24 years' duration, we recognised that even in the darkest of days, we had a duty as leaders to keep the flame of hope alive and to keep talking. The immense suffering of the Palestinian population in Gaza over the past 2 years has been an affront to the world. It has horrified people around the world, nowhere more than in Ireland, where people have been moved to sorrow and to anger. What happened to Israel on the 7th of October was a horrific and brutal attack on an innocent civilian population, and Hamas must be held to account for its actions. It was an appalling act of crime, war crime. But it cannot justify what has happened since. More than 65,000 people killed in Gaza. Horrifically, more than 20,000 of them children. The use of food as a weapon of war, with scarcity becoming hunger, becoming famine. Hospitals attacked, homes and schools destroyed, thousands of years of culture wiped out. People shot as they desperately seek food for their families. Doctors, aid workers, journalists targeted and killed. We have reached a point where what has been credibly described as a genocide is being carried out in front of the eyes of the world. It would be easy to just despair, but we must not. Gaza must move us to action. And there are still humanitarian workers, medics, journalists determined to do their best for the people of Gaza and for Palestine. They are doing so with the most extraordinary courage and without regard to their own safety. To honour them and the Palestinian people, it is right that we as political leaders play our part too. And the only way to end the appalling cycle of violence is to forge a political path. And the only credible destination is a two-state solution, with Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security. And that is why Ireland last year, with Spain, Norway and Slovenia, recognised the state of Palestine. I commend those who have taken the decision to recognise the state of Palestine this week, and I strongly urge those who have yet to do so to give it serious consideration. We know that there are people, including in the Israeli government, who are working daily to make that outcome impossible. In addition to the destruction of Gaza, settlements are expanding every day, and illegal settlers in the West Bank are increasingly emboldened and militant. If we do not move now to protect the two-state solution, if we do not work to build a process through which it can be achieved, there may never be another opportunity. That must not be our legacy to future generations. Ireland is ready to play its part, and I look forward to our continuing steadfast cooperation. Thank you very much indeed.
It's the naivety of these people that gets me. He's living in some kind of Disney world. I mean, the Israelis have made it abundantly clear that they're never going to allow a Palestinian state to exist. So when he talks about action, what exactly does he mean? Now, Germany has said that it's Staatsrassen, it's the reason for its existence as a state itself, predicated on support for Israel, regardless of the war crimes that it commits. And of course, the outgoing German Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, who for some reason has found herself president of this session of the General Assembly, she said last year, although she denies it now, that Israel was quite legitimately allowed to target civilian infrastructure. So she's got to end up in The Hague. And on that score, I'm pleased to say that she has been named with about a dozen other German officials in a lawsuit being brought by a collective of German lawyers to indeed prosecute them for the crime of complicity in genocide. They include Friedrich Merz, the current Chancellor, and the previous one as well. The current Foreign Minister is Johann Wadepool, and he too spoke to the General Assembly yesterday, as we can hear now.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, across Gaza, people are living through hell on earth. Tens of thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands are starving. Colleagues, the horrendous terrorist attacks of October 7 and the most brutal war that followed have made it very clear. This decades-old conflict cannot be solved by terror, destruction, and death. It can neither be won nor managed. It needs to be resolved. We are well aware that today a two-state solution appears more distant than ever. We are well aware that steps are being taken as we speak to bring it further out of reach. We are meeting today because we are convinced there can be a better future. An independent, democratic, and viable Palestinian state existing side by side and in peace and in security with Israel. A negotiated two-state solution in accordance with international law, one to which no convincing alternative has been presented so far. Colleagues, to bring that future closer, Germany is guided by three principles. First, we do not and will not recognize any changes to the 1967 borders unless agreed upon both parties. Second, we consider Israeli settlements in the occupied territories unlawful and a serious obstacle to peace. And third, we respect the IGC's advisory opinion of 19th July 2024 and act in line with its stipulations. My country will always be deeply committed to Israel's existence, which is still being questioned by some. My country will always be committed to Israel's long-term security.
Microphone has been cut off.
Another mic drop moment there. There were a few of those yesterday, including when Turkish President Erdogan took to the stage, and he was less equivocal. He used the term genocide, and then his mic suddenly stopped working as well. You would really think at the United Nations they've got these sort of things sorted out there with that sort of James Bond style set that they've got. Here is Erdogan yesterday. He used slightly stronger language, but you may notice what a dreadful public speaker he is.
This contradiction should not escape anyone's attention, including my friends here. The Netanyahu government governs today a society who, in the past, was targeted for eradication with the persecutions of the Holocaust. And today, his government is committing genocide against its own neighbors with whom they have shared the same land, the same water, air, and sea for thousands of years. Standing up against this oppression is not only a legal duty of the international community, but also a moral responsibility. The international community must stop expansionism in the West Bank, also the fait accompli in East Jerusalem, and the attempts to spread instability in the region. Otherwise, we cannot possibly talk about the presence of an international order or talk about defending universal values. The goal of deepening occupation and annexation policies is clear. The goal is to kill the vision of a two-state solution, to leave no ground for the state of Palestine to survive, to exile the Palestinian people, and to implement their expansionist ambitions by fueling instability in the region.
Well, Erdogan, all mouth and trousers, I would call him. He continues to supply Israel with oil. In the next few days, his navy and that of Egypt are due to conduct joint maneuvers in the waters off Gaza, just at the time that the global Samud flotilla, now more than 50 vessels and possibly more than that by the time it reaches the shores of Gaza or close to them. So that's been highlighted as being a potential flashpoint. It's the first joint naval exercises between Egypt and Turkey in 15 years. The two have had an ongoing diplomatic spat ever since Sisi took power, overthrowing the elected government of Mohammed Morsi, if you remember, the Muslim Brotherhood. But they're best pals again now, and remains to be seen, will they intervene with their frigates and assorted warships when the flotilla is attacked, as they doubtless will be by the Israelis. I've got some footage to show shortly from the flotilla, from a boat perhaps ominously named the Spectre, which my good friend Dr. Frank Romano is crewing. They are currently in the Mediterranean off the coast of Sicily, heading at express speed eastwards. That's going to be very interesting from a diplomatic point of view. The original flotilla, Frank was on the Handala, the second boat. Of course, there was the one decried as the selfie yacht with Greta Thunberg. She's on board another boat again. Both those two efforts earlier this year were substantially ignored by the corporate media, and indeed where they were featured, there was a lot of fun poking done at Greta, the selfie yacht, the selfie cruise, all the rest of it. I mean, I personally found that a really bizarre take, when deeply tasteless as well, when you've got people who are trying to bring much needed aid, including baby formula, to people under siege who are starving to death, and you want to poke fun at them because you don't like their politics or something. I think you need to have a really serious look in the mirror, an examination of your conscience. But anyway, I digress. 50 boats going this time. It's going to be harder for the media to ignore it, and it's going to be harder to frame Israeli intervention and designation of the flotilla as terrorist as anything other than terrorism themselves, piracy, another aspect of the genocide, if you like. We'll come on to that footage in a moment. As I said, at hour, I'm going to be joined by my good friend and former colleague, Johnny Vedmore. We're going to unpick, as I said, this whole sort of Palestine, US policy, UK policy, Trump, Epstein mess that the world is in at the moment. But first, Canada is amongst the other significant countries to have recognized Palestine over the last 72 hours. And the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, was asked yesterday what that would mean in real terms, which is a very good question. This was at the Council on Foreign Relations.
I believe yesterday, Canada joined some European countries in recognizing Palestinian statehood. What do you expect that to accomplish?
Well, I think the first thing to say is this is consistent with our policy since 1947. Every Canadian government of whatever political stripe has supported a two-state solution, as many other countries have. What we have been seeing, first because of the acts of these heinous acts of Hamas, but then other in terms of response, is that prospect is receding before our eyes. So the idea of waiting until all the conditions are in place for a free and viable Palestinian state committed to peace and security side by side with the state of Israel, as what I've called a Zionist Palestinian state, which is what we want. Those conditions being in place, keeping the concept there on the shelf, when it is the avowed policy of the Israeli government that there will never be a Palestinian state. That is the policy of the current Israeli government, and their actions are consistent with with that policy. And I can just concentrate on what's going on in the West Bank without touching Gaza. So what we're looking to accomplish is to keep that front and center. We're under no illusions that this is any sort of panacea, but it's necessary in our judgment and the judgment of most other countries in the world that we have to push on this now because, as I say, the possibility in absolute violation of the UN Charter and an absolute violation of international law of self-determination for the Palestinian peoples is being erased.
Extraordinary, really, that he's got the audacity to say he wants to see a Zionist Palestinian state. I don't know how Palestinians are supposed to live next door to people that have murdered, according to the latest academic estimates, as I say, 680,000 of them. And 3/4 of Israelis want to take over the whole of historic Palestine. We've heard, I've shared them on here, endless declarations of genocidal intent, but you don't need to take my word for it. Have a look at what's happening on the ground in Gaza.
חברים יקרים, כאן מהעיר עזה, כמו שאתם רואים את החורבן, רואים בתים ברקע, אנחנו מוסרים חג שמח, שנה שקטה ומבורכת, שבעזרת השם נחזיר את כל חטופינו הביתה ונחריב את כל עזה כמה שיותר, לא נשאיר ממנה כלום.
As you can see, the bulldozers on the ground there detonating the civilian infrastructure, turning the whole strip to rubble. As we speak, I think about 40 Palestinians have been murdered overnight by continued airstrikes, others dying of starvation, of course. The UK has come under attack, not just from the United States, but also from chirping on the right about the recognition of Palestine. Michael Clark is a so-called defense analyst, and he spoke to Sky News yesterday. I'm going to take apart what he said, but let's hear from him first.
Hamas will make a lot out of this, and it's entirely plausible to argue that the short-term benefit, the short-term effect of this will make things worse before they make them better. But to give up on the idea that the Palestinians deserve a state is to give up on the idea of any sort of peaceful settlement for the future.
It is possible, isn't it, that all this could come back to bite Keir Starmer on the bum?
Yeah, it's a divisive declaration because it's unique in the sense that it divides us from Israel and from the United States. For Britain to take that position is very singular. And you wouldn't have expected that before the 7th of October. You wouldn't have predicted that 3 or 4 years ago on almost any issue. So there we are. We're standing against the US policy, against Israeli policy on a very important issue. It divides opinion in Britain. Conservatives are saying it's just caving into Hamas. They're taking the same view as the Americans. So it's divisive internally in British politics. It's divisive in the Labour Party. And, of course, a lot of the timing of this and a lot of the move towards this is a move to placate that side of the Labour Party. So there's a big domestic element in this as well, as there always are. So we've got to see this as it's a pretty big moment for Keir Starmer because he's taking a stand, and he may well believe it. He may well think that this is just the right thing to do for the future, and I want to be identified on the right side of the argument. But he will take some hits for it, for sure, politically and domestically, and Britain will take some hits for it in terms of our relationship with the United States.
These people are completely divorced from any kind of morality or international law. It divides us from Israel. And he's talking about a state that is committing genocide and has an openly fascist government and a United States that's completely occupied by the same forces. Fortunately, there are a few voices of sanity and those defending international law still on the world stage, and one of them is Francesca Albanese. Here's her latest comment on the situation.
To be honest, these should have changed decades ago, because Israel has been building illegal colonies in the illegally occupied territory, which are war crimes, and committing a number of crimes against humanity, including apartheid, which is fully documented. And this should have triggered the compliance with the law of state responsibility, which obliges member states not to aid and assist a state which is committing international wrongdoing, all the more as these amount to crimes. There should have been instead accountability, opening proceedings toward the people who might have been committed crimes, and supporting the International Criminal Court. There has been a clear derail of this process. But now this is a genocide that could have never happened without the support and involvement of a number of actors. In my last report, I spotlighted the private sector, which has been a pillar or other than a profiteer in the illegality of occupation that has turned into the illegality of into the crime of genocide. But there are also member states behind it. There are member states who are actively supporting, actively involved in designing the future of Palestine and the Palestinians. There are others arming, selling. This is wrong, legally and morally wrong.
Isn't it refreshing to hear somebody speak with such moral clarity? Britain is one of those countries, for all Starmer recognising Palestine. He is continuing to arm it. We do not have a full arms embargo on the state of Israel yet, let alone any more extensive economic sanctions. Nevertheless, the mood is turning globally. Italy, Spain and other Latin countries have been at the forefront of protests against Israel, and a general strike or near general strike in Italy yesterday demonstrated the depth of feeling in that country.
Taking a stand for Gaza. Thousands in Italy joined nationwide protests calling for the end of Israel's attacks on Palestinians.
Why am I here? Why must we be here? Because we are human beings, and that is what matters. Beyond party politics, we must remain human. How can anyone remain indifferent to what is happening?
The collective action delayed trains and blocked roads across the country to call attention to the genocide in Gaza. Some of the protesters blocked the port of Genoa, saying no weapons should sail from Italy to Israel.
It is necessary to block arms shipments, which in this particular case are being sent to Israel. But in general, this is a people that says no to war. So the arms blockade in this case is specific to Israel, but it should apply to every war.
Beyond ending the conflict, the protesters also demanded Italy join other European nations that have recognized a Palestinian state. While Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has condemned Israel's attacks on civilians, she has not gone as far as other European Union members in pushing for a two-state solution.
We call on all nations and all political forces to exert every possible pressure on Hamas to release the Israeli hostages still being held, and we call on Israel to cease its attacks, to end its military occupation of Gaza, to halt the expansion of settlements in the West Bank, to allow full access for humanitarian aid to Gaza, and to start with the proposals of the Arab countries to define a framework of stability and security.
These demonstrators hope the Italian government will hear their call and deliver more for Gaza than just words. Wilson Dysard, Al Jazeera.
Don't miss out.
Well, some people trying to do a bit more than deliver more than words to Gaza are, of course, the people on board the various boats in the Global Subud flotilla. My friend Frank Romano sent me this report from his boat, the Spectre, just this morning.
Here's my friend. Here's my friend from Al Jazeera. What is his name? Hassan? Hassan. Is Hassan? ومن تركيا. من الجزيرة حسن. من جنين صديقي. ترجى أنيسة مريضة بتروح المستشفى. نحن مع سفينة ثانية مع الحسن من الجزيرة، أصلا من جنين صديق، كلبة، وأنا كمان عندي كلبة دم فلسطينيا أخطر من جنين الحمد لله. Serious? شو اسمه؟ Serious, no? Serious. The biggest one. The biggest, yeah. Serious. هذا serious. Serious. Safina is the biggest ship of all. Serious. So anyway, one of us, Anissa, is sick. She has to return to land, to a hospital. She is going on this boat. She's my Safina. Oh, okay. It's Safina Horn. She is going to this ship, and then they are going to take her to the hospital. Who's my Safina? Shireen. Yeah, it's called Shireen. This boat is Shireen, Safina Shireen. Again with my friend Hassan min Al Jazeera. جبت Anissa. Anissa is married, she is sick, and again they are taking her to the hospital and taking her things. She was a great part of us. She is from Germany and is part of us, and we're going to feel very sad that Anissa is leaving. And this is Sirius, again, the biggest boat in the fleet. It's a motorboat, even though it has sails. It looks like an old clipper ship, not quite a clipper. Beautiful boat. And this is Anissa. We are unfortunately.
This is my favorite.
She's just an amazing lady.
Anissa.
And we miss her so much.
Bye bye.
Wait,
one second, guys. 1 second. One second. I'm sorry. 1 second. Just the last text. Please.
Yeah. Doctor, Muslim.
We need a translator between you.
Okay, can you hold this? Just hold. Nothing.
Muslim.
Now. We go now.
Doctor. Come, please.
You can talk.
Yes, I just am speechless almost because she's so much a part of us, isn't she? You know, and she's been so helpful and so courageous in spite of the pain she has been in. She could have been in bed the whole time, but she got up. She did work. She did the watch. She cleaned up the back. Amazing lady, and she has amazing faith and is an amazing activist for Palestine. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
That was just this morning on one of the 50-plus boats heading to Gaza. They've got another 4 or 5 days before they will reach what's called the danger zone, where they could, or almost certainly will be, intercepted by the Israeli Navy in international waters, no doubt, which is itself, of course, an act of piracy. But we know that Israel acts with total impunity and disregard for international law. Somebody who's all too well aware of that is my guest joining me now, Johnny Vedmore. Welcome to the program, Johnny. Great to see you again. I haven't seen you since March.
Really nice to see you and talk to you. Yeah, I don't know. It was that when we were filming Truth Bomb. That was a good one. I enjoyed that.
On a conspiracy quiz show that Johnny does, and I got far too many questions wrong. But anyway, that's
many people did. Don't worry, many people did. There was 26 contestants in the first series, and many learnt the hard way that they had to challenge AI's official narrative. It was very good. But I've missed you. I'm looking forward to speaking with you, Basil. Come on, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, well, please, first of all, please invite me back to the second series if you do one. Now, on to the serious stuff. I was just showing our viewers some footage there from the global Subud flotilla, which is about to enter international waters, where it's likely to be hijacked by the Israeli Navy, more than 50 boats. I can't help thinking this is going to provide a sort of international diplomatic flashpoint that we haven't seen before. There's lots of talk at the United Nations yesterday about the two-state solution, all the rest of it, though nobody seems to be able to say exactly where the state of Palestine is going to exist. And of course, we have total intransigence from the Israelis themselves and their puppets in Washington. But matters are coming to a head, aren't they, Johnny, in a way that we haven't seen, I would say, in our entire lifetimes.
I would hope so, but I think we've all evil conspiracies to take over countries and things like this. They all reach a point where the international community must resist, but it's been hard to see, like, the international community seems to have built up a resistance to doing the right thing. After all of that, it's almost like the war, viruses of wars in the past, and they've been attacked over and over again, and it's always been big rhetoric. And now they're kind of, even like the European Union, have even been approaching a little bit of a war stance and against the East. So I think there's a bit of immunity that came before some of the other big conflicts in history as well. This bit where everybody thinks that they're not going to be affected, it's not going to go the same way, but we're going to end up in a real mass conflict because one of these moments that could spark something will reveal more and more, over and over again, that the establishment is on the side of injustice, on the side of slavery, poverty, all of it. We know, we've seen it over and over again. The guys up top, the elites, the establishment, it was the same in apartheid South Africa. You know, they were making so much money. They were able to do things that they weren't able to do in other countries. I mean, it was a brilliant place to move around nuclear materials to other countries too. And Israel itself benefited within its nuclear program via South Africa too. So I mean, when there's a racist, evil regime in power, other intelligence agencies and other countries that are kind of out of control tend to use that place as a petri dish for their experiments. And what we're seeing at the moment is genocide allowed to happen. And I'm not sure if these sparks will spark something beautiful. I'm doubtful that's so. I'd like to manifest it by thinking positively, but that will take everybody else thinking positively too. I get a feeling that instead what's going to happen is that it's going to it will be a flashpoint of conflict where we will reveal, the face will be revealed to more and more of the population, and then entropy sets in. You know, this world order that they've got can't last forever.
Yeah, there is definitely some kind of global awakening going on. I think more people, I mean, it's been long enough coming, hasn't it? 25, 30 years or longer I've been on this path. I know you've been having a peek behind the curtain, you know, like in The Wizard of Oz, who's got their hands on the levers and pulleys. And more people seem to be aware that the construct, the mirage, the illusion of a sane world with responsible leaders who want the best for everybody, and indeed, as you say, that war is the most horrific thing that must be avoided at all costs. That illusion has been shattered in recent years, more so by events in Gaza than anywhere else, but also by, as you said, the warmongering of European states, including Britain. I've just seen that experts are advising United Kingdom universities how they should prepare for a war, World War III, no longer just the stuff of conspiracy theorists and Reddit threads. Experts have warned that UK universities need to come up with a new strategy so they would be ready for an interstate war. I was asked by a colleague here on Unprecedented TV a couple of weeks ago, you know, am I afraid of Russia? You know, this was when our completely obsolete aircraft character was in Japan. No, I'm not afraid of Russia in the slightest. I'm far more afraid of warmongers in the West who seem to want to provoke World War III. What about you, Johnny?
Well, I find that what you were talking about just then about, paradigms that shatter just allow the warmongers to make new paradigms. So the new dialectic is already forming. We already see it with, they hijack dialectics. They know straight away what's going to be the trend, what's going forward. They're looking at all the analytics, and they got the idea, the general thesis, what everybody believes is going to be the thing that is supported, and then they are able to co-opt the antithesis before it even knows it is, and the thesis before it even knows it is. So they're constantly manufacturing dialectics. We see this with the Epstein situation. If it's hard for me, really hard, when you say the sneak peek behind the curtain. I've been doing journalism now for about a decade, really like investigative, full on, immersive, learning about every part of a subject, every single date, every single name, every single source. They forced people like me to have to do that, because they want to find a hole in your work, and you have to make your work without any holes whatsoever. It has to be just fact. What you say has to be proven. And so I look at everything with a really big, wide, objective lens, understanding the context of a lot of these situations, like in the Epstein case. And when you're observing the people out there, if you're like in that able to see, I know the context, I know that I have the knowledge, I'm looking at the people behaving, they are falling for some of the oldest tricks, some of the oldest logical fallacies, some of the oldest faux dialectics, some just given to them. They are one or they are t'other is nearly all of the dialectic that's out there. Good, evil, black, white. Constantly, everything is to do with opposites, sense and logic and illogic. Everything is to do with the opposites, and all those things are handed to you, because not one thing, not the Palestine situation, not the situation with Epstein, not Ukraine, none of them are black or white or simple. So anybody selling you black or white, hey, they're selling you a pup. And people cannot realize that, because often they don't have the surrounding context. They don't understand why something is happening next to something else. And I think there's so much happening. People are contextless, and they're going to search for that context in places where, like I say, the dialectic that's most fitting for the establishment going forward can be created, so that everybody who follows it can be led off by the Pied Piper.
Yeah, they're particularly true in the United States following the assassination of Charlie Kirk, where the left-right divide has become more visceral, more violent than ever before, doxing people who celebrated Kirk's murder, which I think was a pretty tasteless and reprehensible thing to do, but nevertheless getting people sacked and all the rest of it. And Trump now saying he's designating Antifa a terrorist organization, even though it isn't an organization at all. It doesn't have any formal organizational structure. That, of course, means that he can designate anybody a terrorist. And under the draconian legislation, once you're designated a terrorist, that's it. You can be locked up indefinitely without charge, or even murdered in some kind of extrajudicial killing if they want. Under the Biden administration, we were told that the biggest threat to US national security came from white nationalists, from white supremacists within. And yet the death of someone who has been characterized as such has been lionized in the most extraordinary way. I saw footage of the Kirk memorial. It looked more like World Wrestling Federation event with pyrotechnics and a choir of thousands. I mean, really sort of bizarre spectacle, Johnny. And as you rightly point out, the governing elite are very happy to maintain a divide and rule policy wherever possible, because it's only when people understand that we have a common humanity and come together along some shared principles, like the betterment of society forever and our own rights to life, liberty, and self-expression, that we can shake off the shackles of this endless division and rancor.
And I got to say something really important here that we touched on earlier as well about context. Hey, if you take away context, anybody is what they say you are. If Trump wants to call you anybody Antifa, without context, the more context you take away from the general knowledge and the more distraction you add in its stead, what you discover is that you can call anybody anything and they are that thing, because no one knows any different, or the majority don't, and they will follow you. And the lack of context really sparks all wars. We're told this thing happened, and so we must do this, and it leads us down a long road that actually had, if we talk about Ukraine or what's going on in Palestine, that contextless road has loads of context. All we can see is it starts at October 7th. Suddenly, they can take away all the context, all the previous, everything from before. Suddenly it's about one thing, and that's the only context. And they're giving us context. They're giving us values. They do that through your phones. They do that through your computers. They do that by manipulating you. This whole direction where we're going as a society and what we give up is our understanding of what's really going on in the world, so we can remain just in a state of shock, really.
Yeah, and it seems to be a lot of trauma-based mind control going on, if we think back to 9/11 and the whole COVID farrago as well, which everybody seems to be in a huge hurry to forget. But let's not forget, hundreds of people committed suicide because their businesses completely imploded. A lot of children were permanently damaged by being forced to wear masks that were completely unnecessary, as well, of course, as the injections. As far as I'm concerned, now with hindsight, we look back on that, and it was just a psyop, wasn't it? It was an exercise in population control, more so in the West than in the developing world. I think there were large parts of the developing world where the narrative didn't really take hold. But so addicted are we in Western nations, more so than ever now, to our computers, to the continuous drip of the news feed, which is almost as vital to the maintenance of life as air and water these days, Johnny. That a lot of people found themselves the victim unconsciously of a mind control program. One of my favorite thinkers and commentators says that everybody on the planet is a mind controlled slave, because they're subject to these narratives, influences, belief systems which shape their whole reality, whether they're aware of it or not.
Well, the narratives that are being created, the paradigms that are being created, the dialectics that are being created are created at the moment when something sparks. So when Ukraine war happened, started in 2022, what you had is straight away this mass of CFR guys, Chatham House guys, military guys out on the news, and they're setting in their points in stone. The first few weeks is just that. Same in the past with the pandemic. You had Jeremy Farrar, you have Richard Sykes, you have all of the boys like Neil Ferguson, all Royal Society boys, all the ones who come out to set the narrative. They've been paid to write the story, a story that resonates with you, and they know that fear resonates with you. Those guys learned that as well, put that into action through foot and mouth. And basically, if you look at foot and mouth and you look at how COVID happened, same sort of things, ignore all of the evidence, go over to this very small gaggle of elite that all resonate from the Royal Society. It's our narratives are given to us by these big boys up top, These big boys who sit on their round tables, sit on their policy, in their policy institutes, sit in their universities, the academics, and they're going to tell, we know this, they're going to tell the government what to do, and the government is going to get actors and comedians and singers to sell it to us. That's the routine. That is, if you again remove all the context and you just watch anything, watch the actors playing their part. That's the actors who are academic playing their part, the actors who are government playing their part, and the actors who are actors playing their part too. This society it's run by a load of different two-steps. And once you see the dance, you don't see anything else. This is why the term waking up, the red pill idea, that the infamous and evil Curtis Yarvin Mencius Mulbug, the neo-reactionary, coined really out of the Matrix. Like, that's why it's so extremely important. You wake up and afterwards you cannot go back to sleep. But it doesn't mean that the context you're then given is going to lead you forward to a right place. People who have woken up are looking for more context and find whatever they're given.
Yeah, of course, with respect to the Russia-Ukraine war, the key word, which is still being repeated ad nauseam to this day, unprovoked, wasn't it? Putin's invasion of Ukraine was unprovoked. You know.
Let's not talk about the non-governmental development organizations working for the neocons since 1967, at least, slowly being implanted all across the country, all across the region, until color revolutions popped off and allowed these non-governmental organizations who were linked to big intelligence agencies and structures like the CIA via loads of different conduits and loads of different tentacles to take control of the country's governments, until eventually they got to Ukraine, where when they started that color revolution process, and the first one popped off in Czechoslovakia in 1989, they needed 50 to 150 NGOs in that country causing political strife to cause that to happen. By 2004 in Ukraine, the Western very often comes back to neoconservative technocratic globalist institutions, had 30,000 NGOs implanted in Ukraine to make what happened in 2004. There is context galore there. The Maidan, there's context galore there. Loads of it. And it all started in 2022.
That's right. It all started in 2022. Providing context is so important, and there are very few sort of pinhooks, if you like, where we can say, well, this was definitely an influential factor, but Epstein is one of them. Kash Patel said last week that there was no evidence that Epstein had trafficked minors to anyone at all, which, as I said earlier, goes completely in the face of his own trial. Quite apart from the testimony of the witnesses who are now starting to come forward. I can't help thinking Patel is going to have to resign over this. But first, here's a brief extract of Tom Fitton talking about Judicial Watch's investigation of one of the most frequent flyers on the Lolita Express. I'm talking, of course, about former President Bill Clinton.
And Judicial Watch separately investigated Bill Clinton's trips on Epstein's plane. Interestingly, the Secret Service said they had no records, even though it was clear Clinton was traveling as a former president on the plane. How did that work? Did he not have Secret Service protection? And if he didn't, why not?
Yeah, it's still a lot of questions around Epstein. Bill Clinton and Donald Trump being two of the key players. Extraordinary, isn't it? What a coincidence that two of the last 5 presidents' names are closely associated with Epstein and his exploits on the island, along, of course, with the former UK ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, who was sacked in disgrace just over a week ago. I just was dumbfounded, really, when you think, Johnny, there's 65 million people in Britain. And of all those 65 million, Keir Starmer had to pick the single individual closest to the world's most notorious paedophile. What an
Always a few of those. Well, You picked the right guy to talk about this, I tells you. Some of the research points that I had when I was working on One Nation Under Blackmail, Volume 1 and 2 with Whitney Webb, was to focus in on his relationship with Bill Clinton, the trips around Asia and Africa, to focus in on the grooming network in particular, and the victims, which that's not an easy ride to take anybody on, because in any case, again, no black and white. It's not Jeffrey Epstein evil, ergo anybody who says that Jeffrey Epstein did something to them is good. There's a load of people there who are lying. There's a load of people who are CIA. There's loads of people who have worked for some really crazy people. So there's a real complicated mix. And the Clinton stuff is much more complicated, because to understand that, and I've made a load of, I'm working on number 6 now, but I've made a load of Epstein lists, so I can get out to people within about 6 to 8 minutes a lot about Epstein. And with the Democratic Party, Clinton brought Epstein in 1993, just after he won the election. From January, for 2 years, you had 17 times that Bill Clinton Jeffrey Epstein went to the White House along with Mark Middleton. Mark Middleton, who was found hanging from a tree with a shotgun wound to the chest, because that's how one commits suicide in the world nowadays. And Clinton had obviously chosen Epstein for something, and everybody looks at Epstein's operation as only a child trafficking operation, when, of course, that was a facet. There was human trafficking going on. But there's also a load of other things, including arms dealing, including big-time realty, including a lot of intelligence stuff, and the choosing of the designing of the technocratic panopticon that we see unveiling around us, of course, but also the choosing of the Democratic Party leadership candidates, the funding of them, and the grooming of them. So Bill Clinton obviously wanted to make sure his version of the Democratic Party stuck. He said, I am the first person who's going to be a third-way politician. I'm doing this first new type of politics. Come on, this is my party. And he took it over. So Epstein was funding John Kerry. He was funding Joe Lieberman. He was funding Bill Richardson. He was funding Chuck Schumer. He was funding all of the boys who were potential Democratic Party leaders of the future. And he was trying to groom others in other ways. Donald Trump comes into this. Even though people don't like to hear this, they don't listen to the context. So they don't really understand it either, because Donald Trump had been groomed by Republicans. He had already changed over to Republican in 1987. He ran for the Reform Party candidate in Ross Perot's party in 2000, and he was obviously being groomed by Epstein. Epstein wanted to groom him. That doesn't mean the grooming is going to work, but Epstein wanted to groom him for a potential place in the Democratic Party if it came to that. But the Democratic Party and the New York elite hated Donald Trump so much, so it was kind of, it was a bit chalk and cheese. Ended up with Trump literally kicking him out of Mar-a-Lago, saying no more Mr. Epstein round here, partially because he knew the investigation was going on, but mostly because I think Epstein had finished trying to get Trump to come sort of into the Democratic fold or back towards it, because Trump was heading towards Republican. There's a lot of context to be had. He was choosing and training and grooming the next potential Democratic Party leaders. Think about all the relationships he had. Think about them. Joe Lieberman, he was the vice president. Epstein also funded, and of course New Mexico connections all down there, but that all fell through. He chose Joe Lieberman instead. We know Al Gore was going to meet him at the time. He was like, all of this is Democratic Party. When he was having a consortium in 2003 to start buying out parts of the media, Epstein was dealing in a consortium with Michael Wolff, with Harvey Weinstein, with Mort Zuckerman, with lots of people who were left-leaning mostly and were revolving around the Democrat Party. And I think that's really the split between Epstein and Trump as well. What people don't really realize, that's not just a split. That's a special split. That's a split, 2 splits. That's Trump splitting away from Epstein because of the sexual stuff coming out, and Trump splitting away from the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party's key representative, Jeffrey Epstein.
Johnny, come back and tell us more about it very soon. But before you go, quickly, we're out of time. Where can people find you and your work?
Newspaste.com. Come find me. I'm on YouTube. Everywhere. Come back. Come find me.
I will do so. And I can't thank you enough for joining me today on Ascending Order. There he goes. That's Johnny Vedmore. He'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, 1 p.m. for your daily lunchtime news edit, uncensored, unfiltered, unprecedented TV. See you all again tomorrow.